Welcome, everyone, to our FinTech Summit session, Cloud Compliance and Security in the Financial Industry, Navigating Regulation, Resilience, and Responsibility. My name is John D. Maria. I'm Director of Operations Excellence for CSA, also host of the popular CSA Security Update podcast, and your moderator for today. In today's discussion, we're going to explore critical balance between leveraging cloud services for financial data management and adhering to stringent regulatory standards. So our panelists are going to address the vital assurances needed from cloud providers and impact of legislation and collaborative efforts required between cloud services and financial institutions. So let's get started and introduce our panel. So first of all, we have Sophia Pogrebinska, who's a distinguished product and technology leader currently serving as IT Cloud Officer EMEA at PayPal in Luxembourg, focusing on IT and cloud governance across Europe. With a career beginning in Kiev, Ukraine, she's significantly contributed to privacy product technology at PayPal, launching products globally for over 400 million customers and ensuring compliance with various regulations. Sophia is also involved in several professional organizations and holds a degree in probability theory and mathematical statistics. Welcome, Sophia. Secondly, here you have Amira Bako. He is the area head cloud technologies and group audits of Commerce Bank AG and board of Cloud Collaborative Audit Group responsible for operations and communications. Mira has academic background in economics. A couple of years ago, he joined the group audit of Commerce Bank and now heads the audit area Cloud Technologies. Amira participated in numerous audits on cloud service providers within the newly founded Collaborative Cloud Audit Group. He was elected in the board of the CCAG Association. Thanks for joining us, Amira. Michael Habash. Michael is the Vice President for Cloud Detection Engineering at State Street. His cybersecurity career isn't traditional, but he spent many years in technology consulting in a non-practicing attorney and a former police officer. Very interesting. Hi, Michael. Glad to have you here today. So with having said that, we're just going to dive right in to our panelist, and we're going to start with Amira. And let's talk about what are some key compliance challenges that banks, fintechs, and others face, when working with cloud services and regulated data in particular.
Sure. First of all, hi, and also welcome to this wonderful conversation. So when banks collaborate with cloud services, we know banks encounter several critical compliance challenges. So let's delve into some of those topics. First, let's say, and more from a general point of view, the fragmented regulatory requirements. I would point out the financial service sector usually operates across various jurisdictions and therefore also various rule sets, and each with its own set of rules and regulations. So the audience from the financial sector knows what I'm talking about. That means different financial products such as loans and investments or payment services have very specific compliance needs. So navigating these requirements across these various offerings can be intricate, especially if business processes are operated in the cloud. Secondly, and maybe to touch a more specific area, the data security and digital resilience. Ensuring this robust data security and digital resilience is paramount for our sector, for the financial sector. with this ongoing digitalization of processes, the digital transformation, so to say, banks must safeguard their sensitive information even more closely and assure resilience in a complex world. Banks therefore need a very strong business continuity management function internally set up. Thirdly, I would like point out to the reliance on these multinational technology firms. While big tech offers us game-changing cloud and data analytics capabilities, they are concerned that these services may not always meet the European stringent data protection and security requirements, if I have a perspective from the European financial sector. Therefore, banks must carefully assess their third-party providers, not only cloud, to ensure this compliance with the regulatory requirements set up for our sector. Another compliance challenge goes around the evolving cyber threats. Cybersecurity risks continue to evolve. We know this challenging banks to stay ahead of a threat. This is also tackled by the newly introduced DORA set. So robust security measures to prevent unauthorized access and data breaches, but also a strong incident reporting and risk management are essential to protect our regulated data in the cloud. I could go further, but let's say last but not least, regulatory standards and compliance requirements involve substantial costs. So we touch an economic aspect here. Banks must, for example, allocate resources for compliance audits, assessments, and ongoing monitoring, which brings the collaborative cloud audit group into place here. Yeah, does it answer John's?
Yeah. No,
Okay.
that sounds great. I don't know if anybody has anything to add to that, Sophia.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. It depends, depending on the nature of the product. There are certain compliance challenges, and the key question remains for fintechs and the banks how to find the right balance, the level of balance between the innovation and use of those new and evolving technologies, and between the regulatory compliance, considering, well, if it was only DORA, there are multiple regulations. The landscape is very complex. For example, now we are facing the new era with artificial intelligence, and totally agree with Imre as well on weaponization of artificial intelligence as another side. And the regulation, on the other hand, is such as AI Act, blockchain challenges, etc. So there's a lot to take on. This many compliance challenges indeed.
Yeah, Sophia. So you mentioned Dora, and kind of leads into my question as well as to you is, uh, how does the Digital Operational Resilience Act, impact the use of cloud services in the financial sector, and really what are the key compliance challenges for financial institutions?
Yeah, so on that, for the benefit of our audience who maybe hasn't been closely in European regulations and how it evolves, DORA has been on our agenda for a while. Now, so in general, the regulation, the main objective is to achieve the resiliency of the ecosystem as such, as opposed to previous requirements for resiliency of specific particular firms. Well, every firm actually, but anyway, so resiliency of the ecosystem. And in that sense, it's a very useful regulation and very much needed development, so very welcome development. That said, the regulation itself is extremely ambitious, what I mean when I say ambitious? The way it's structured, there are level 1 and level 2 requirements. So implementation requirements are mostly, by the way, on the level 2. So highly recommending to read those RTS, ITS that is first batch is out now and ready for implementation. But in any case, there is a gap between the existing regulation and this creates certain delta that needs to be addressed. So that is certainly a certain workload that financial industry has to take on, has to absorb, and for a good reason. But then this creates a workload that somehow has to be absorbed. Now, banks and fintech firms, credit institutions have been already subject to other regulations. For example, subject to circulars 22826 or 2750 for risk management, etc. So certain procedures, certain policy framework, risk management is addressed to a certain extent, and controls in the cloud in particular exist. Now, with introduction of DORA, smaller entities also are in scope. Insurance firms are in scope. And those entities don't necessarily have all the talents that credit institutions and banks have accumulated for years. Meaning that one of the challenges, I think, is a talent shortage. And this perhaps adds to the already existing shortage in cybersecurity and IT even more. So this is the first, and then in addition to the talent shortage, also resources, how to allocate resources, understanding of the value of the risk management, integration of the ICT risk management generally in enterprise risk management framework, etc. And just to illustrate and give you one example on that, one of the requirements, one of the ITS. Is in relation to register of the information related to contractual arrangements on the critical ICT services by ICT third-party providers. So to compare the existing and incremental requirements from about 30 data points, we're going to about 96. And that is after industry feedback has been taken into account. So this workload is not to be underestimated. I think by itself is already a challenge. And on top of that, of course, the same challenges that already existed on, guarding confidentiality, availability, and integrity on the data in the cloud, of the sensitive data.
It's interesting. Jishin mentioned the insurance companies because they fall under the financial industry sector, and a lot of people don't think about that, but that's absolutely true. So it really extends out beyond banks when it comes to talking about financial industry and how they need to meet these requirements. I'd like to turn to the United States for a second, and Michael, sort of point this towards you. Is the Treasury published a report last year on the state of financial services within cloud computing, and have continued that work with the FSSCC and elsewhere since. What are your thoughts on this and other recent executive orders, and where is the U.S. heading on this issue?
Sure. So I can't really speak to the U.S. government. I don't work for them, but I can speak kind of as a practitioner in the regulated space here in the United States. So the report you're referring to really was about cloud adoption in the United States that the Treasury put out through one of their committees. Not surprisingly, they found massive increase in the use of cloud across the financial services sector. They also interestingly found that we're all doing it very differently. So their members who were participating reported different usage of cloud. Some are all in, kind of an early adopter group. There's hybrid users, there's people doing multi-cloud. And then there's kind of this hidden SaaS situation where we're using software as a service, but that's actually built on commercial cloud. So the report noted that the regulations in the United States are generally neutral on the use of technology. They tend to focus mostly on the financial services industry, the company themselves, and not the technology providers we use. We'll talk about this, I'm sure, at some point, but DORA is now taking a slightly different approach to that. The report itself noted there's a number of challenges that we've actually spoken about kind of extensively already, that are impacting the adoption of cloud in the United States by financial services sector. So one of the big issues they noted was the lack of transparency between from the cloud provider to the financial services company. That's that shared security model that we talk about sometimes that actually results in some lack of transparency. I think, Sophia, you mentioned there's gaps in human capital. The people needed to adopt this technology don't exist in the marketplace to a great extent, or if they do, they're not in the right amount of numbers. And that's partly a factor of this being kind of new technology. Because it's a service, we're seeing that new types of services are coming online all the time. It's very hard for us to develop the talent pool for new resources that have existed 2-3 years, right? So that's a big problem. Another thing that was noted was that financial services firms are exposed to incidents that are essentially occurring at the cloud provider themselves, right? So it's almost like any other service provider. We're kind of subject to those incidents and have to manage them. Furthermore, they're noticing that there's substantial market concentration in cloud providers, right? So globally, there's 3 major providers, and a lot of people are using them. So they've noted that's a major risk that has to be addressed. There's some contractual inflexibility in the relationship with cloud providers. And I think Imra mentioned this, there's substantial regulatory fragmentation, which affects their ability to adopt cloud. So these are all issues that are we will be working through as a community, I'm sure. And I think DORA is probably a big step in the right direction towards standardizing how we approach regulation, and also bringing in the provider, the ICTs, the information technology providers, into the conversation, right? So it's essentially piercing that veil a little bit. But we're seeing that this tension continues to play out between these challenges and our continued need to provide services to our clients.
Yeah, sounds like we had that challenges globally. I don't know if anybody has any comments on that particular issue. But it seems to go hand in glove. It's a global issue, even though it's DORA and everyone's concentrating on that and the integration of these compliance issues that we can carry on globally, not just in our particular regions or countries. That it really is a global issue.
Yes. Yeah.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I would say it's a global issue, John, and we're seeing the regulatory entities wrestling with these issues, right? So in the comments, so most people are aware that in the United States, the SEC published a new rule that went into effect in December, requiring disclosure of material cybersecurity incidents. That went into effect, I think, December 18th of last year. And in the commentary to that rulemaking process, you can see that the regulators are wrestling with a lot of these issues, right? So I think these issues, people are aware of them, and we've mentioned most of them here, many of them here, and the regulators are as well, and they're trying to figure out how to balance the challenges of these issues with the need to create governing frameworks, create transparency, and respect the fundamental rights of organizations and people.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, we, and this brings to mind, my next topic I wanted to discuss. We're talking risk assessment, and as we know, risk assessment really is the foundation of everything we put in place. Everything we do, specifies what we should be doing, why we should be doing it, level of risks. And so really becomes the crux of that living, breathing document. And so, I'm going to turn to Sophia here for a second. In terms of risk assessment, what are specific challenges and risks associated with storing data on cloud services that seem to be at the forefront of many regulators' focus, and how best can this be mitigated? And maybe Amira might have some additional thoughts on this once you're completed.
Perhaps I'll start a little bit with historical context on the topic. As many of you may remember, about a decade ago, having storing sensitive data in the cloud was one of the biggest challenges, and certainly there was a lot of progress done by dialogue with the cloud service providers, so that many controls were put in place to address those risks. And now majority of the industry players in fact see the adoption of cloud services as one of the business enablers. So it is an important business enabler, but then it took a while to build for the industry to build the trust with cloud service providers, and really a lot of work went into that from all sides. Then another factor, and this work keeps evolving, and it's evolving in an interesting and challenging landscape, I would say, considering the evolution of threats. I think that was already mentioned today. Cybercrime as a service, emerging trend, or perhaps an existing trend for a bit. Weaponization of the artificial intelligence, and so on. And of course, this can put sensitive data in the cloud at risk. Now, it's only natural that the regulators have shifted in a certain way the focus towards business continuity and resiliency. So in that sense, I think another challenge that exists in the industry is perhaps the proportionality aspect, considering the certain entities are smaller in size and less complex, so then they have a slightly different risk profiles than certain experiencing, I would say, other set of challenges.
I would say from a more customer perspective, of course, the bank needs general risk assessment on the use of cloud services, but and here my specific role in the third line of defense in a bank comes into play. They need to assess the risks very individually for each cloud service provider. And here, by the way, the cloud control metrics of the Cloud Security Alliance helps us, because the CCM provides an great framework to assess the risk, and in addition to differentiate between the risks which is on our hand and the risks which is or lies in the responsibility of the cloud service providers. The shared responsibility model applies here pretty well. So yeah, it's very important that we assess our risk not only from a general basis or from a general point of view, from the internal perspective, but also having a view on the individual cloud service providers, especially if we apply a kind of a multi-cloud strategy.
And that's a great point that you brought up. I'm glad you brought that up about the shared responsibility model, because that's an area that we've seen that a lot of companies raises a lot of eyebrows. A lot of companies, stop at that and go, gee, I'm not sure I know whose responsibility that this is, or is it a shared responsibility with my cloud service provider? and so on. And that is so key when it comes to risk assessment as well. Is, how is that shared, and do you know who's responsible for what? That can be a real issue, and that's why, these collaborations are coming into play to make sure we have a nice, consistent uh, process that can be used globally, uh, not just siloed in different countries and areas. So, yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. It certainly is a key point that we need to be cognizant of. Michael, move over to you. How do data sovereignty rules really impact the use of cloud services, especially when we're talking about cross-border financial transactions?
It's definitely a growing issue. And many countries are now regulating where and when data is stored and used. So as that continues, as more and more countries start defining regulatory schemes that require data of certain types to not leave jurisdictions, I believe it creates a tension with the core underlying philosophy of cloud, which is it's ubiquitous, it's available at all times in all places, and resources within that system are transient, right? So we get this natural tension here between keeping data in one country or one region versus providing our services globally and at the edge if possible. I think it's going to continue to come up. I think many countries are probably going to increase their focus on this topic based on what we've already seen and what we're already dealing with now. And I think in the next couple of years, we'll probably see more regulation on it.
Great. So let's shift gears again here real quick. And talk about, service providers. CSPs are cloud service providers. And I'm going to move over to Mira again. And maybe you can sort of articulate for us, in your experiences, what role do cloud service providers play in ensuring compliance with, financial regulations, and how can they, this is a hand in glove, thing, right? So how can they support financial institutions in that regard?
Certainly, thank you. Simply said, I would say cloud service provider play a crucial role in ensuring this compliance with the regulations for banks and our sectors. And generally spoken, the cloud service providers can support us by providing secure and compliant cloud services. But this is actually not all. The cloud service providers really help us identifying and evaluating and managing the risk, which customers are usually not able to handle technically by their own, but we are accountable for. So that means we have to understand not only the cloud related risks, which are in our organization, but also which are related to the services we bought from the cloud service providers. And more specifically from a third line of defense perspective, which I am in, I would also add to execute our audit rights. This would be very vital for us, for the financial sector. From a more, let's say, technically or customer perspective, I would say especially the CSP should provide robust security measures such as strong IAM processing controls to ensure the data protection of our data, of our customers' data. And of course, the cloud service providers shall adhere to bank standards, but not only from a general perspective, like the DORA requirements, which they need to comply with anyway, and other local or global bank-specific requirements, but also individual from from a bank perspective. So each bank may have specific requirements to safeguard their data, their processes. And this brings here, or this puts responsibility to the individual bank to negotiate with a cloud service provider their specific needs. At the end, and this is maybe, and this also is true with respect to the DORA requirements, that legal penalties, for example, which are strictly also highlighted in the DORA requirements, must be avoided, of course, and with that, trust must maintained here.
Yep. Yep. Any other comments?
Yeah, and well said. And to add to this, I imagine for cloud service providers, majority of their fintech customers are operating in a strictly regulated environment. So compliance is a matter of being in business. So therefore, we see a lot of traction in this space, but then there's a long way to go still, considering this the new challenges, the new regulations, and evolving landscape. But I think the most important point I wanted to make here is I found it very useful to see representatives of cloud service providers joining the industry groups, giving feedback, discussing the regulation and understanding how to implement it in the best way and really meet the needs, evolving needs of the market. So continued dialogue, I think, and also for the industry, and it is paramount importance to find the right balance and to make sure that cloud service providers are also being heard and seen and being taken into account, because we need to recognize that cloud service providers are certainly enabling the business big time. So that's one of the important points. And then to sum up, I think I need to recognize as well the role of industry groups and the role of a Cloud Security Alliance as well, on alignment of interests of those groups. So we need to thank Cloud Security Alliance for this great work. Truly appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for those comments. Yeah, absolutely. We're now working with many organizations globally in the financial industry. Yeah, trying to bring together everyone as one cohesive industry and sector, because these issues are not specific necessarily to any one country. Well, each country has their own challenges and issues. As a financial sector, because of the high regulations and the high bar that we have to meet. Yeah, it's crucial that we work. That's why we have the mappings and reverse mappings of all the different types of regulations and industry groups that we're working with, and so we continue to do this and continue to work with people like yourselves and other volunteers and organizations. So great topic, and I personally learned a lot. So I appreciate everyone coming and giving your time for this session. As we conclude, I'd like to thank you all for engaging in this conversation, and thank everyone for attending. whether you're delving into the complexities of cloud compliance and security in the financial industry, or exploring new technologies, or seeking insights on a wide array of topics, remember that the journey of learning and adoption is ongoing. So stay curious, stay informed, and continue to seek out discussions that challenge and advance your understanding. If you have any more questions or need further assistance in the future, feel free to reach out to anyone on this panel, which I'm sure you can find LinkedIn and other areas, or you can reach out to cloudsecurityalliance.org, and we'd help to get you hooked up with not only these panelists, but any other experts that you wish to engage with. So wishing everyone success in your future security and technology endeavors. And I will say goodbye for now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.